this is a super interesting time to be alive. What the U.S. government is saying about this and what formal officials are saying about this is like an unprecedented thing. So I think the wheels are already in motion, and we're all in for a like pretty crazy ride, I think.
Yeah. Josh, how you doing, man?
Cool. Great. How are you?
Good. Thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you for being patient too with the audio stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited. This should be fun.
Yeah. So welcome to Bearing the How podcast, everybody. Josh Anderson is the guest today, and he has a really badass YouTube channel called Red Panda Koala. What is up with that name, actually? 1 second, explain that.
Yeah, so I just love both of those animals. Red pandas, I think, are the cutest animal, and koalas are pretty cute as well.
I think koalas are cute.
And koalas have like 2 thumbs. They're high on eucalyptus all day. There's a lot to love about them.
Yeah. So his channel has nothing to do with pandas or koalas. It has to do with UFOs.
Yeah.
And you have a really cool, like I was saying before, I've always been interested in UFOs myself, but I feel like I feel like it's happening now that people are tapping into the UFO thing from a way more realistic, logical, factual based, like you're really going into the research. You know what I mean? It isn't like just conspiracy stuff. So maybe just start, if you don't mind, starting with why you started your channel and how did you get into it? Cool. How did you get into UFOs? The way that you're doing it, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel like it's just conspiracy stuff. It actually seems like there's a lot of evidence, new stuff coming about. So just how did you get into it?
Growing up, I was always interested in politics and history. I majored in political science in college, interned for a congressman out there, helped found our Model UN club. So always kind of interested in that realm of stuff. And basically I came out to LA after graduating, and originally I'd wanted to do just a typical history channel or a history type channel. So I originally was going to do like the history of this country, the history of this war, you know, so like pretty grounded stuff.
Yeah.
And I was kind of getting everything in motion to start doing that. And then all of this UFO stuff started hitting mainstream media. And me and like a lot of my friends, we just consume everything we can when it comes to the news.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even though sometimes it could be like overwhelming with like all this Trump stuff.
Yeah.
But it's still just super interesting and I think rewarding to just be tuned into like what's going on in the world.
For sure.
And so when I saw that, it was just like, just changed everything. You know, I'd never seen that kind of, and we'll probably get into it more like what we're actually talking about, but basically some like high level people and super credentialed and credible people were on mainstream media discussing UFOs as a serious topic, you know?
Yeah. And when did that kind of start where you actually started seeing more mainstream stuff? Because my experience with this is that I've always been into UFOs. I used to watch YouTube videos all the time back in the day. And I kind of just, you know, like most people probably, you kind of grow out of it, where you kind of, you know, grow up. And I got into the mindset where I was like, I don't fucking believe in UFOs. I think it's just conspiracy stuff. But then Bob Lazar, which, you know, we'll probably talk about, discovered him. And then the Tom DeLonge interview on Joe Rogan kind of reintroduced me. That's really the only basis that I have with it was that one. And I know you did that video that you sent me, which is awesome, where you talk about Tom DeLonge's company and all that stuff. But what was when did this start happening the way that it's happening now?
I would say I was like pretty similar. If anything, maybe I even was into it less than you were.
Really?
I had like heard the name Roswell. I had like heard the term flying saucer, but it was one of those things that I had never really like taken the time to actually look at.
Yeah.
You know, I was always more into reading about like history of wars or history of countries or this person, that person.
For sure. Yeah. More like real history.
More like, quote unquote, real history.
Yeah.
And then so this initial like news story that kind of broke everything, the main thing was the release of this Pentagon program that investigated UFOs. And the first time that was really ever talked about in mainstream media was about December of 2017. And there's actually like, so I obviously believe that we're kind of in the middle of some sort of disclosure right now, whether it be like an actual UFO disclosure, or maybe the government is even trying to cover up their new technology. I'm not, and I think you could see this in my channel. I don't really like put all my eggs in one basket for anything.
Oh yeah, that's something I really loved about the videos I was watching, is you seem pretty neutral. Like you're really digging into it, and you're giving, you know, you're really giving the UFO side a good argument, but you're neutral. It doesn't seem like you're biased or crazy about it or anything.
Yeah, so that happened, and they actually released all that information right around Christmas, which is actually a tactic you see in like other non-UFO related stuff, like I believe the Comey report was released on, I forgot which holiday it was, but they'll typically
Why
do
is that,
these
you
kind
think?
of, I think just kind of they know people aren't watching the news as much, and it's kind of more of like a relaxing kind of ease into whatever the topic is. So yeah, it was right around Christmas of 2017 when I saw the first news report that said the U.S. government has been studying UFOs for years. The man who ran the Pentagon program, Luis Elizondo, went on mainstream media and said basically that he didn't think that these were any like human craft that were flying around in our airspace. So seeing that on mainstream media, you know what I mean? We're a respectable guy.
Yeah, because that has not really happened before from anything that I've seen. Nothing on mainstream media from a respectable person talking about it.
And even more than that, the government had an official the U.S. government had an official investigation into UFOs from 1947 to 1969. Project Sign, Project Grudge, and then Project Blue Book.
Yeah.
And so at the end of that, in 1969, they basically came to the conclusion that UFOs aren't real. They're not a threat. You know what I mean? They're not extraterrestrial.
Yeah, like we were saying in your video, which I think those two videos I want to link because those were really good ones.
I think those are some of the good nuts and bolts. Here's actually what's happening with the government.
Yeah.
And some of my other videos gets into some more of the conceptual and weirder parts about what this could be.
Yeah.
But so seeing Luis Elizondo talk about it on mainstream media, that was a total reversal of basically what the U.S. government's official stance had been since the 1960s.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's a good place or a good question for me to ask to kind of go into it for a second is what has the typical opinion of the government been in the past? And then this guy, what was his name again?
Luis Elizondo.
Yeah. What did he say exactly that kind of shifted your perspective on it? And now and I would like to get just kind of your opinion. What is your opinion on what's going on right now, generally speaking, with UFOs?
Okay.
Kind of your overarching view of, because I know a lot of people are like, UFOs, it's bullshit. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's just, it's people that are crazy, alien abductions. They lump it all into that same area, right? Like conspiracy theory, crazy stuff, So I'm just curious, for anyone watching that's not super into it, what's what if you had to put it in one sentence, what's the shift that has happened?
Yeah, so that shift, basically, the Pentagon admitting that they investigated UFOs after 40, 50 years of denying that they were even a thing. And then the shift also is that a man of that caliber who ran that program going on mainstream media and talking about it.
And what did he say exactly?
He said that he investigated, so he basically said that he was running this program and that they investigated UFOs. It was through the Department of Defense. I think $22 million budget, which isn't that much, and
but it's
the grand scheme, it's still a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that they have all these, the cool thing about it was that it was all through military and government channels. So a lot of the cases that they were having had multiple points of reference. So the reversal.
Yes.
So the reversal was that the government had officially denied that this happened. They said they weren't investigating it. And then so now all of a sudden they're saying that actually they have been investigating it. The man who ran that program, Luis Elizondo, went on mainstream media, and he basically said that they were collecting data from multiple military UFO encounters, which is beneficial to people that are into UFOs, because not only do they have eyewitness testimony of fighter pilots, which, just sidebar, in order to be a fighter pilot, you have to be top of the top your whole life.
You're not crazy.
You're not
right?
crazy. You're sober. You're entrusted with some pretty crazy serious things. You have
sure.
clearances.
And then I just will say, I think it's a big red flag that the government was denying researching it, right? And now they say they weren't. Why were they denying it? You know what I mean? That's such a red flag for me. What the fuck is that? There's obviously something pretty secretive, confidential going on.
Yeah, at the very least, it's all weird. So then, Lou was talking about that stuff, saying that they have eyewitness testimony from pilots, radar returns, radar data. So there's all this stuff kind of that I had never seen on mainstream media. So that's kind of what jump-started my interest in it. And once I did that, I just basically been reading about UFOs nonstop for the past year and a half. And
what's your goal with your channel? What is kind of your aim for the channel?
Yeah. So I guess, that kind of is a good segue, because I see that stuff on mainstream media being talked about for the first time. And I obviously want to do my own research, right? Yeah. So I'm like, okay, wait, maybe this topic that I kind of thought was kooky all of my life is serious. And when you kind of go into research this sort of thing, because UFOs have been such a fringe topic for so long,
Yeah.
and it's not really like been mainstreamed, quote unquote, until recently, honestly, there's a lot of information out there that's like lost in like hours of interviews, lectures, books, you know what I mean? So there wasn't really many places online or YouTube especially where there was like concise, clear, I guess like references or like the work people did.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't seen it. That's why I was like super interested in your channel. It, like at least there are some YouTube channels, but it's that about UFO stuff. But it seems like it's still before the segue that we're talking about.
Yeah,
it's still kind of in the only conspiracy stuff, and it's not
there's,
going into the depth like you're going into with it.
Yeah, there's like a lot of like quote unquote charlatans in this subject because it is so fringe. Where like they'll kind of just say like inflammatory things, or like some of the other like big UFO channels, they're kind of just trying to churn out content as much as possible. So they'll like post hoax videos, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
for
like,
sure. Yeah. I've
so
seen
there's
those
a
too.
few other like UFO YouTube channels that I like look up to that they also do like I do for my videos, like a bunch of research. You know what I mean? We're not trying to just like put stuff out to put stuff out.
Yeah,
like,
you're doing like real legit video essays on the topic, treating it like it's not some bullshit conspiracy thing.
And it's because I do think this is an important topic, and like more and more you're seeing people talk about it. Although at first it was kind of weird that no one really wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I just think it's kind of important for other Americans and humans that were like me when they go to look for more detail and like more information to just kind of have clear and concise videos about
it. For sure. And you know, I just want to kind of reiterate what it seems like what we talked about a little bit, that you're not like deep into the conspiracy aspect of it. Like you're not talking about alien abductions and like going crazy into that. Like you're keeping it legit. And I'm the same way. Like I like to be skeptical about this stuff because of course I want UFOs to exist. You know what I mean? Like I'm biased. Like I fucking love if they exist, but you have to be neutral and skeptical
especially
about it.
With something like this that is like if this is all real and like kind of what's been happening is real, like it changes a lot of things. I think it's like my duty as a UFO YouTuber to be like pretty critical of things and skeptical of things. I don't want to just like be promoting false information, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because I know this topic, like if true, is heavy for a lot of people, so I want to come at it respectfully and like respect people's beliefs and stuff like that.
For sure, man. Well, I love what you're doing. Thank you for doing it, and I'm sure there's be a ton of people watching this shit that love it too. Cool. For sure. So let me ask you, like, what do you think? I don't know the best kind of segue to get into this stuff, but I do kind of want to get your opinion on, from a lot of the videos you've made, research that you've done. Do you think that UFOs, if you believe that they exist, what do you lean toward, that they are extraterrestrial or that it's a government thing just going on with the government? Because I know that there's kind of two sides to it. And I haven't done enough research myself. I have no idea. You know what I mean?
No, exactly. Yeah, I'm down to break it down. There's so many theories as to what they are. So I think kind of we could go through like my mentality with this. So we know for sure that government officials are coming on mainstream media and talking about this. And they're saying that these craft can outperform any American craft, any foreign craft. You know what I mean?
For me, that's enough to say, well, there is something going on.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is, but that right there in and of itself is like, you know.
Same. And honestly, I would say this is even best case scenario just because of like how much I've looked into it. I think best case scenario would be that this is a false flag by the government to basically like hide our technological advancements.
Really?
I would say that just because, we'll go through the steps of it.
Yeah,
basically.
go through the steps, yeah.
So we have government officials saying that we have coordination with like the Navy and the Pentagon still. So a lot of people might try and discredit what some of these recent people are saying because they're retired and whatnot.
Yeah.
But they're coordinating with like the Navy and the Air Force. We've touched on like Tom DeLonge, and Tom DeLonge kind of has this docuseries out right now, and they're interviewing all these old people, but also they're interviewing like active duty Navy and Air Force people. So that shows
they are interviewing active duty people too?
Yeah. Wow. So that shows like clear coordination between these people that have like left government and still government and military.
Yeah.
So at the very least, we know that they're talking about it on mainstream media, and it's like a coordinated effort. And then from there, we can get into like what the possibilities are. So like I said, I think best case scenario, honestly, is that it's our own craft and we're just kind of like slowly letting the world know like we have it, flexing on other countries. Second after that, which is now we're going to get like less and less, you know what I mean, ideal.
More into the conspiracy stuff.
Is that it's a foreign government's craft and capabilities, which is scary.
That is very scary.
You know what I mean? So that's worse than it being our craft, obviously, that there's a foreign government, maybe China or Russia, that has like the capabilities to outperform our fastest craft. Just for some reference.
I was about to say, like, while you're hitting on that, what are the performance specs of, like, what they've actually seen, you know?
So just for some reference, the fastest plane on the books right now for the U.S. government is the SR-71 Blackbird, which has been clocked at 5,000 miles per hour.
Yeah, that's
like towards the fastest. And these UFOs have been clocked, according to like the data and stuff coming from this Pentagon program, at 13,000 miles per hour. So more than double.
Almost triple.
Yeah, almost triple what we can do. They also, some of the other major like red flags or key takeaways from how they maneuver is they're able to do like right angle sharp turns, which no planes can do.
Yeah.
Another one of the crazier ones is that these UFOs, right? They're able to operate in low Earth orbit, in our atmosphere, and underwater.
See that I haven't heard of the underwater stuff, but I did hear you talking about it in the video that you sent me, that they're multifunctional in all these different mediums, which is like.
And what you have to think, look at our own craft, right? Think about if we want to go underwater, we have a submarine.
Yeah.
If we want to fly in the air, we have an airplane. And if we want to go into space, we have like rockets, right?
Yeah,
and all three of those are completely totally different, built totally different. And these UFOs are able to basically maneuver in all three of those like areas, underwater, in the air, in orbit, seamlessly. Like nothing, no resistance, no wind resistance.
Yeah. And all of the specs that you're talking about is an accumulation of a bunch of different eyewitness accounts put together, or I'm just curious. I've never heard of or seen anyone talk about the underwater thing, but there are people that are saying the eyewitness accounts, and these are people that are in the Navy and stuff talking about. Sorry about that.
Cool. So Commander David Fravor was one of the pilots who, when that initial story of this Pentagon UFO program existing, there was a few basically like case studies or case examples of like UFO encounters.
Yeah.
And he had seen the UFOs operating underwater. And then Lou Elizondo, the guy who ran the program, has gone on and said that these craft can operate underwater. And a lot of other like independent like ufologists have said the same thing.
No, yeah. I think I saw a UFO.
Oh, really?
I mean, just like really like just side note.
Yeah, no.
When I was like maybe 12, I remember it was back in Texas, and this isn't legit. This is probably just some over-exaggerated memory, but I do remember like seeing something in the sky, and what was weird to me about it was how quickly it went from a completely standing still position and just shooting off. And it was so freaky. I like ran into my house and like told my dad, like, I just saw something. Like, it really freaked me out because it's such a weird thing to see something like that. You're so used to seeing planes and stuff the way they are. Anyway, just side note, like
totally.
I've thought about it ever since.
It's a freaky thing. Yeah, and the funny thing is, I've never had a UFO sighting at all. Really, yeah. Most of my interest in this whole subject comes from the credibility of other people who've had encounters.
Which is good. I think that's a good thing that you're coming from that perspective.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm talking to aliens or UFOs or anything like that. But I guess so we went over some of the characteristics that they're displaying. Is there any other major ones I wanted? They have no wings.
No wings, and also like what?
No exhaust.
Is there any speculation of how they're being propelled? Because I know Bob Lazar has gone into it.
Bob Lazar
could get into that if you want a little bit.
Thing. Some of the other people are saying like some sort of anti-gravity thing. Although to be honest, I'm not totally sure on that. So. I think that is totally a possibility. I mean, it's clearly not doing something that like a conventional method of like propulsion or something.
Yeah, so there isn't propulsion that's left. There's no smoke, nothing.
Yeah, no smoke,
nothing
no like
from any of these accounts.
Yeah, no wings. So I think the anti-gravity thing is totally a possibility, but also, and this is kind of like how I view the whole subject.
Yeah.
It could totally be something that we haven't even thought of or imagined. You know what I mean?
Just a completely new technology that.
I don't want to fall into the trap of like putting this into terms that make sense to me because it could be something new.
Yeah.
And you'll see that in my channel. You know, I rarely use the word alien.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a good chance they might not even be what we think of as aliens.
Right. That's the perspective for some reason that I've always leaned to, and I have not done nearly as much research as you. I don't know nearly about, but for some reason I always lean toward, I do believe that there's something, and it's probably of Earth. It's probably technology that isn't from outer space. I have no idea, but for some reason, it just makes more sense to me logically that there's some technology, our government, hopefully, and that's what it is, that it isn't an alien type of thing. But I don't have no idea. What is your, like, I don't know if you even want to give your opinion, because I know you're trying to keep your channel very neutral, but what do you lean toward more with it?
Okay, so I think if we continue back to where we were, we'll get into that like probably next. So we had said the second option was it's a foreign government, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the third option is that these are intelligently designed by we don't know what, right? So, and I'll give
aliens.
I'll give like maybe like some of what I'm leaning towards these days, but it's honestly one of those things where it's like always changing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm just trying to like consume as much information as I can and then like kind of piece things together or this kind of seems likely, this doesn't. But if it is an intelligently designed or intelligently controlled like craft that's like of non-human origin, the things that automatically go through my mind are, I think it's more likely than not that they've been here for a while. I don't think they all of a sudden got here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another thing that runs through my mind is if they're able to do these maneuvers that we can't, that basically like defy our laws of like physics and gravity that as we understand it today, it's impossible to really know their full technological capabilities. And then another thing that runs through my mind when I think about this whole situation is it's impossible to know how long they've been here and to what extent they've influenced human affairs. You know what I mean?
For sure. And like something, I don't remember who said that. I think Joe Rogan was talking to someone about it. And he brought up the point, which made me think about it, that or do you think that it's highly likely that they are, if it is extraterrestrial, not from Earth, that it's probes?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's the thing that I always ask is, well, why would they come down? Why would aliens be in these things? Like if it is something from not here, it seems like they would send down probes like we do. You know, we send probes to the ocean, we send our satellites to space. Like why wouldn't it be the same thing?
Yeah, that's a big theory. A lot of people in the UFO community lean towards like the gray alien that you kind of see.
Yeah, that's the most common.
Is like almost like a biological robot.
Yeah.
In a way.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, some people lean towards that and that's you'll see that a lot of times from people coming from the extraterrestrial hypothesis, like these are from a totally another planet far away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like it would make sense to like design some kind of life form that can endure like space and long travel and then just kind of relay information back.
Yeah. It does make sense. I mean, that's what I would think.
There. And then you also see people talking about that these things could be like some sort of interdimensional being. So that's maybe like the fourth thing, right? So first we had it's our own craft. Second, we talked about it could be a foreign craft.
Yeah.
Third, it's we could talk about it being like an alien from another country, and then
just not
from another planet.
Yeah.
And then like fourth, it's some sort of interdimensional thing that we don't even understand yet.
Yeah.
And it's like us saying and attributing like little green men from another planet is us like putting into terms that make sense to us. Like we can understand, we could look at our own history and think of like Christopher Columbus going to the New World and just like kind of one more technologically superior like culture interacting with another.
Yeah.
But who's to say it's not some sort of like I said, interdimensional intelligence that we don't know. You know what I mean? And that's where I'm at, and
is that kind of where you're leaning toward?
Well, I'm leaning towards where like I don't know really. Like I'm still in the boat that this could all be government disinformation.
Really?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm still researching it. I do, like, if I'm being honest, I do definitely think it's one of the latter, though, that it's probably, I don't think it's human craft. And if it is, like, I'll be open to it and I'll cover it. I'm not, like, totally.
Why do you not think it's human craft?
Just because, like I said, the credibility of, like, the witnesses. So we have Commander David Fravor. We have, like, multiple astronauts who have said things. We have people from all over the country, or from all over the world. One of my videos is on this Soviet test pilot. Her name was Marina Popovich, and she had encounters. And you can see these encounters going pretty far back.
Yeah.
So
and you don't think that it's like some kind of human crap because they've said things like this isn't from Earth, and you're just going off of their credibility.
It's like, I'm going off their credibility and their knowledge of like human capabilities and human aircraft and like what a human aircraft could do.
Well, you hit on it, and I don't know if this is too much. I tangent sometimes, like my mind just skips around, but I would like to ask about the anti-gravity thing with like Bob Lazar. Have you done I know you said you're making a video on Bob Lazar.
Yeah, he's two down the line on my current one that I'm working on is on Tom DeLonge, and then the next one is Bob
And I
Lazar.
Definitely want to talk about the Tom DeLonge stuff for sure, but just because we're kind of talking about the technical
we're going
stuff,
all over around today. Yeah, I'm down.
This will be perfect for clips. Just clip it out. But like, what is this whole concept of the anti-gravity? Because to me, because I've listened to a ton of the Bob Lazar stuff, I got obsessed with it a couple of years ago. What is that all about? It makes sense to me it makes sense the way that it maneuvers and how it just shoots off and how it can be completely hover. Like, to me, it makes sense that it would be some kind of anti-gravity technology.
Yeah, same. Like, I guess in a sense where, like, we were kind of talking about this, but I'm still not totally 100% sure where I fall on Bob Lazar.
Yeah. That's right.
According to what he said, is that they were manipulating, like, gravity within, like, atomic particles, basically.
Right, and there was an actual like machine motor or ball or something that would actually shoot some kind of gravity
he was saying
wave.
That there was this element called element 115 where within like the atomic structure of that element, you could basically like shoot some sort of ray and it would amplify like the gravity that keeps the elements like components together, and then at that point you could manipulate it.
Yeah.
And so basically, the way I've seen it explained by Bob Lazar and like other people affiliated with Bob Lazar is it's like if you had a bowling ball on a bed.
Yeah, that's the same way I
you were just punching anywhere around it and then you just kind of are falling.
Yeah.
And it's actually funny, like some of the stuff Bob Lazar says does kind of like go along with at least some of the more recent UFO sightings and like the more credible. I don't want to say Bob Lazar is totally not credible, but his credentials.
What is the around Bob Lazar? Like, what is the sketchiness around him?
The main sketchiness, I would say, is that his education records don't show up for anything.
Gotcha.
And typically, like someone of that caliber would have like a pretty solid paper trail. Now, people will say that he was his paper trail was like covered up by the government, right?
And then let me just put this in there for anyone who does not know who Bob Lazar is. Do you want to just give a quick little brief of who Bob Lazar is?
Yeah, so quick brief on Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar was a scientist who in the late 80s claimed to have worked on reverse engineering of extraterrestrial craft at Area 51. And he's actually the guy who basically popularized the term. Before that, not many people knew what Area 51 was.
Yeah, and he blew up. Like he
blew up.
Popular.
He was, I think we're seeing like, now that I've looked at all the history, we're definitely in the middle of like a UFO resurgence right now. Yeah. And then around that time, late 80s, early 90s, there was a big UFO resurgence. That was right around the time when the Roswell crash was being super publicized. And then Bob Lazar came out and said that. And so he's actually one of the most polarizing people in the UFO community. Kind of talking about this, but because like half of the people like totally believe him, think he's like Edward Snowden, thinks he deserves to be like have statues made out of him, stuff like that. And then the other half thinks he's just like a straight up con man.
Yeah,
he's a liar, he's a fraud.
I have no idea, honestly. I think I'm kind of with you that I'm like I have no idea what he says when if this kind of stuff is the stuff you're interested in and you've never heard of Bob Lazar. Go watch and listen, because it's crazy how well he explains the technology of it, and there's so much detail that he goes. That's why I question it. Like, man, how? Yeah. Either he's like one of the best storytellers ever.
He's like the best con man ever, the best actor.
Or he's being honest about this shit.
I would say the things that go for me in Bob Lazar's favor is one, just kind of like the way he carries himself. Yeah. The way he carries like the things he's talking about. He does seem pretty genuine.
Yeah, he does, for sure.
And that probably isn't something you want to base like all of your stuff on, you know?
But we're humans.
It is important, you know what I mean? I mean, he doesn't give you off that vibe that like, oh, I'm a sketch person who's lying to you.
Yeah.
I think the other things are he was able to go with some friends and record actual test flights.
That's the other thing. Go watch that video.
Yeah, watch those videos. Hopefully, by the time you watch this, my video on him will be out and you can watch that. But it's like, so how did he have the knowledge of these test flights happening around Area 51 in Groom Lake if he wasn't working there?
Yeah.
And then what's the last one? Oh, I guess, yeah, the last one we were talking about was that. So his schools denied that he had gone there. And then there's also this base called Los Alamos, which is where they developed nuclear weapons originally and actually has its own long history of UFO related stuff.
Really?
But regardless, and Bob Lazar had said that he worked there. And Los Alamos, the research lab and facility in New Mexico, denied it. And then George Knapp, the investigative journalist who kind of broke this whole story, was able to find a yearbook with Bob Lazar's name in it. So those three things are kind of what I think give him the most like believability in my mind. And I guess the things that go against it for me is, just kind of the school thing. And then another big one that doesn't really get talked about a lot is his financial history, just because if you look into it, which in my video we will, like he kind of has a lot of like debt and stuff like that.
Yeah, I didn't look into too much of his history.
Yeah, so, and I mean, that's fine, like people have debt.
Yeah.
But I just, like from other knowledge I have, it's like, it seems that if you're gonna work on really highly classified things, that the US government totally factors in your debt, because that's like apparently an easy way to buy someone off or flip someone as if.
And you can also ask the question, is this the government fucking with his record to try to like discredit him? You know what I mean?
No,
is there something going on like that? You know? Because my question is, he has huge fucking balls to go out and talk about this stuff.
And he's maintained his story over 30 years now.
And you said that there was a relatively recent interview, because I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, he actually did a recent documentary with Jeremy Corbell, who's like pretty prominent ufologist. Definitely recommend watching it.
When did that come out?
Came out, I want to say, in October or November.
Oh, that recent?
Yeah,
Holy
that
shit.
recent.
I need to look this up. Wow.
Yeah, so he kind of he did he did interviews like right when it all broke, and then like he kind of took a break from it. And this is like another point of contention, because he kind of like claims that he doesn't like to be part of this whole thing. No. But he still kind of is here and there doing interviews, which people kind of say is like disingenuous or whatever. So
I mean, it's crazy. Like, what if I was in that position? Like, what the hell do you do?
Yeah,
it's the heat that he takes, and like, it's very controversial for sure. I want to see him on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Why hasn't he been on?
I think we've talked about this, like the way Joe did Tom DeLonge. That was a pretty.
So, do you want to talk about Tom DeLonge? I feel like that's a pretty good segue.
That's a pretty good segue.
Bob Lazar, look him up. He's a huge one. Like, there's a lot of really interesting stuff there. And
watch my vid on him.
Watch his video when it comes out for sure. And then Tom DeLonge, so I'll just let you go into it. Blink 182, like random as fuck.
So kind of like back into like how I got into the whole subject, right? Never really thought about UFOs. Super big Joe Rogan fan, right? Everyone loves Joe Rogan, right? So he had Tom DeLonge on, and I just listened to it, and the first time I listened to it, I thought Tom DeLonge was totally crazy, because like Tom DeLonge was making all these, for anyone that doesn't know, Tom DeLonge went on Joe Rogan and was basically making all these claims about having like insiders within the government that were kind of like feeding him information, and that he was going to be going public with some like big UFO stuff. Yeah. And to Tom's credit, the interview on Joe Rogan could have been a lot better had Joe like done some research, even a little bit. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because you could tell basically from the bat that Joe was not really buying it.
Yeah,
he was kind of toying with them. And it's pretty disappointing, because like Joe has like always like kind of been like open to ideas, and like he'll have Graham Hancock on there who's kind of saying like not like mainstream science stuff and like open to it, but he was kind of, I'd almost even say rude to Tom.
Well, I'll say like I think I get where Joe is coming from with it, that this topic is like very polarizing. And Joe is also like, he's pretty biased. I mean, he said before he wants UFOs to exist. So I could see that like he has to play devil's advocate. You know what I mean? Like that's part of the thing with him. And I'll say too, Tom, like I didn't even know he was going to talk about UFOs. When I saw that he was on, I was like, oh, Blink 182. Like this is going to be interesting.
Nostalgia. This will be fun.
And I was like definitely skeptical about Tom. It just seemed like, he wasn't going into detail. There were questions that he couldn't answer. So I get like where Joe was coming from with like, what are you talking about? Like very questioning. But who knows? Maybe the timing was wrong and it should have come on later. You know what I mean? It seemed like it was too early because there's shit he couldn't talk about.
Yeah. So that was my first kind of brush with this whole UFO subject. And I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of pretty crazy. Didn't really look into it. And then when the December 2017 article broke, that's when I like got really into it, and I started researching Tom DeLonge and like what he was actually talking about. Because like also to Joe's credit, Tom DeLonge did a horrible job of kind of selling it.
Yeah,
like what
yeah,
he
yeah.
was doing.
I think that was the case. That
It
was
was
what
like
it was.
it was the lack of research on Joe meeting like Tom's kind of poor presentation that just kind of
Yeah.
made for what could have been an amazing interview. Like,
And it seemed like Tom was just, it's almost seemed like he couldn't talk about stuff
Yeah.
as much as it should have been talked about. But it's
Yeah.
changed now. It seems like there's definitely more
there's a lot
information
more
coming out
There's a
now.
lot more information coming out.
And just to say too, and you can go into it, but a lot of the stuff Tom was saying is like legit. Now it's coming out. All
No,
the people
totally.
he's working with and stuff.
Totally,
You want to
yeah.
go into that? The
Yeah,
company, like the company has and everything.
So once that all the December 2017 stuff came out, I started doing a bunch of research on Tom and this company that he was talking about, and I saw that like this company that he has accumulated is filled
What's
with
the name of the company?
To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science. So now I don't want people to say like I'm a To the Stars Academy fanboy, although I do like totally respect what they're doing. I think we do have to be open-minded and look at like, yes, these people are credentialed, but they're also like from the government and the CIA, and this could be a false flag.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we also have to be open to the
Open-minded and
possibility,
skeptical.
open-minded and skeptical that this could also be totally what disclosure actually looks like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So I looked into the whole history of Tom DeLonge, and I found out that when the WikiLeaks email hack happened in the 2016 election with like Hillary Clinton and the DNC, that big old scandal, you know,
Yeah,
still
for
talking about it. John Podesta, who was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager at the time, but prior to that was Obama's senior advisor. Prior to that, Bill Clinton's chief of staff, was in email communication with Tom DeLonge.
So very credentialed.
So probably one of the most credentialed people like in the country at that time, especially when he like his party was in power, everything like that. Was talking to Tom DeLonge about meeting with also some pretty credentialed like major Air Force generals and stuff like that about meeting and discussing this UFO topic. And basically, for anyone that doesn't know, Tom DeLonge went on to Joe Rogan to talk about UFOs, but also to talk about this kind of plan of like rolling disclosure that's going to be taking place over the next few years, which it seems that we're in the middle of.
It's kind of crazy that like I watched that and just thought, oh, Tom DeLonge, he's like on coke. He was so like
he did look coked out,
all over the place. It looked like he was coked out, and I just didn't think about it. But you watching your videos and everything, it's like, holy shit! It seems like like what he was saying, it's starting to come to fruition.
Yeah. See, like I definitely feel comfortable saying we're in the middle of something. I lean toward it being some sort of like UFO otherworldly thing, but it could be, like I said, false flag, government operation. But whatever it is, we're definitely in the middle of something.
Of something going on.
Something's happening.
Do you have any idea how Tom DeLonge like got involved in this?
Yeah,
like how is he, the freaking lead singer of Blink-182, able to get people together and do this?
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, perfect, because I'm like reading all this stuff right now for the current vid. But basically what he says, and this is all according to him, you know what I mean? So he says that he leveraged his star power that he had from Blink-182
Makes sense.
to get an audience with some high-level people, which I'm trying to piece together who's who, like based on the Podesta leak from my video and like based on some of the interviews he said, but I can't really piece exactly who's who, but basically that he eventually was able to get a meeting with some high-level person and basically laid out for them his plan, his idea of what should disclosure, quote unquote, look like.
I see.
And he basically says that he came to it like respectfully and like
Use the star power, like you said. He probably
power.
has money and
he has
like
money,
fund and put
He's
that.
like,
yeah.
There's a disconnect between what the government's doing and like the internet. People like know, people are talking. You know what I mean? So
that's questionable for me. Like just to play devil's advocate. To me, it's very questionable. Like Tom DeLonge, like
exactly. That's
it
why
almost
it's
seems like
so weird. That's why
because
it's like Tom DeLonge, Blink-182.
It seems like, well, is this like
all the small things?
Yeah, a ploy of like the government is using him as like a way to distract, like you're saying, a false flag or something. You know.
And there's some history of that happening. A little sidebar, a little history tangent. This is another down the road video, but there's this guy named, I think, Paul Benowitz, who was for a few years or maybe a few months, but basically given like false information from somebody within the CIA about UFOs.
I think I've heard
and it kind of like drove him crazy, and it was like this whole thing, and it was like in the 80s, and it was like crazy, right?
Yeah.
And that's why you'll see a lot of the older ufologists who are around for that are a lot more skeptical than like people my age who are like, whoa, this is awesome, this is cool.
No, yeah.
They're like, we've seen what happened with Paul Benowitz. You know, we got our hopes up in the 80s. Like, we're going to like listen, but we're going to be cautious.
Very cautious. I think that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. Exactly. With anything, you know what I mean? With any kind of information you're receiving.
Yeah.
So then Tom DeLonge met with those people, laid out his plan, and they said, yeah, go ahead. Like, go ahead with what you're doing. And they started advising him, and he started meeting with some like military advisors. And then eventually with some of the people he was meeting with, he made this company To the Stars Academy. I have a video where I go over like the credentials of like
all the people,
all the main people in it. But basically, to some of the heavy hitters, we have Lou Elizondo, who's part of that, who ran the Pentagon program. We've talked about him already in this interview.
Yeah.
That investigated UFOs. Another heavy hitter is Chris Mellon, who was the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the latter end of the Clinton administration and the beginning end of the Bush administration. So those two right there is already super high level.
Yeah, for sure.
Another super high level person you have is Steve Justice, who ran Lockheed Martin Special Operations.
That's the one where I was like, holy shit,
that's the one too for me where it's like, okay, so like Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon, they're both kind of like political, you know, CIA, like you could kind of see this with them being like, okay, this is kind of like some sort of disinformation campaign or something. Yeah. But when you have an engineer of that caliber, that's basically like one of the top engineering posts like in the country.
Yeah, for sure. Because Lockheed Martin
develops a lot of the airplanes and weapons for the U.S. military and Air Force.
Wasn't he a part, from your video, just vaguely, wasn't he a part of the aircraft that you were talking about, the fastest one? Was he part of the development?
I don't think he was
the
director at that time. He might have been there for that. Actually, you know, now I'm thinking about that, was probably a little bit before his time.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the SR-71 Blackbird is the plane we're referring to. And I think I referenced it earlier when we were talking about the discrepancies between our fastest plane, which that is, and these UFOs, that 5,000 versus 13,000 miles per hour. And so, yeah, he basically, I think it was definitely after him probably, but he was running the department that in the past had developed that airplane.
Yeah, there's a few that you listed off that I was like, wow.
And they test all their stuff at Area 51, Groom Lake out there in Nevada. So it's like
all connected.
There's all these connections, and it's like I said, I've been reading about this stuff for like a year and a half now, and it's like there's just always like new stuff to read and like connections to be made. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, is there anyone else?
There's one, I want to put a sticky note. Well, maybe if there's something you want to bring up, but I want to put this sticky note. And the woman that came on Joe Rogan's podcast recently, she had a book. I think I'm going to have to look this up really
Google
quick.
Google it real quick because I haven't, I remember that
I might edit this out if it takes too long. Yeah. Let's see, Joe Rogan UFO podcast. She was a journalist, and they went into depth, and she was talking about probably some of the people you're talking about and stuff. Bob Lazar, they talked about. And she was saying that it was that like Russia, like genetically modified people. Have you heard of this stuff? Like genetically modified bodies, put them in a craft that they crashed on in our territory. And
that's one of the Roswell conspiracy theories, or theories, I guess, as to what happened there.
Yeah.
That it was and that was a fear. I've read that from J. Allen Hynek, who was one of the chief scientists on the UFO investigations in the 60s, Project Blue Book. He said that one of the fears the U.S. government had was people weaponizing this phenomena and creating like a fake UFO invasion or something to like distract the American public.
Yeah.
So that is a theory that's been thrown out there for that.
Sorry, you can keep going while I'm just looking this up. Okay. So this is for anyone interested in this stuff. Joe Rogan Experience number 1299, Annie Jacobson. That's the woman. That she's a journalist. She wrote this book, and there's a lot of this stuff being talked about. Unprepared. I should have rewatched this one to bring it up in this, but it'll be cool for you to watch it.
Yeah,
that would be a whole video you probably could make on this. But her theory was like the whole Russian thing. That God, I'm gonna butcher it, but like she was saying that there was a guy that was saying Russia like genetically modified people to make them look weird and put them in a craft. So you do kind of know about that. What is that whole theory?
So people say the Roswell crash. Quick little history tidbit for those that aren't like as like read on it as I am, I guess. But basically, something crashed in the New Mexico desert near Roswell, New Mexico, in 1947. At first, and this is why it's like sketch and like the quote unquote holy grail of UFO crashes. The military officially released that it was a flying disc, which at that time was a term that referenced like UFOs. You know what I mean?
And they released it in the news and stuff?
In the news. It was officially broadcast on the news. And then they redacted that like 2 days or 3 days later and said it was a weather balloon. Another point of contention of why this is also sketch is that Roswell, New Mexico was the base that housed the only atomically armed bomber squadron in the world at that time, because it was in the country in the world. It was the squadron that dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yeah. And I actually have a video about that too. There's like there's a big connection between UFOs and nuclear weapons.
Really?
But back to the Roswell thing. So basically, another big part to that is there's a lot of witnesses that claim that were in the military at the time that said that that wasn't a weather balloon. That was kind of a story, and that it was a UFO, and they even said that they recovered bodies.
That's what I think, because of the whole putting it out into the mainstream and then taking it back. Anytime something like that happens, there's obviously something going on, you know?
Yeah, it's a red flag for something. And all the witnesses, and like we were talking about, like it was the only atomically armed bomber squadron in the world. So the officers that worked at that base weren't just like run of the mill. Yeah. They're cleaning like toilets for the military. You know what I mean? These are intelligent people. You know what I mean? So then one of the theories that people throw at that is that it was the Russians trying to like instigate this whole UFO thing, and they got like deformed people and genetically modified them to look like aliens or something.
Because I think that Annie Jacobson, now it's kind of coming back to me, like I think she was saying that, or one thing that she said, I don't want to say what her theory is or anything. I got to watch that video again, but I got to read the book too. That it was the whole Russia thing, that was Russia arms race, like they're competing with each other, and it wasn't actually about aliens. It was about the competing of technology. Like, you know, it was all conspiracy, that we faked that there was a UFO crash and found this stuff just to scare the shit out of the Russians. I think that's something that she was saying, but you know, I don't necessarily buy into that. I think there's something more going on. You know?
No, yeah. And that's a fun, like, I guess fun, quote unquote, fun thing about this topic is like, it touches on so many different areas of history. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like, originally I think my channel was going to be, before I got into all this UFOs, something related to the Cold War, because I just find that era so fascinating, and like all the different like pieces and parts that were moving around the world at the time. And so, there's definitely like a backdrop, I feel like, of the Cold War related to this whole thing. And that's kind of like with my videos too. I like to like pick some sort of backdrop where it's like the main points of my video are the UFOs and then some sort of backdrop. So I have the one on nuclear weapons where it's like partially about UFOs, but also about like the nuclear arms race that occurred like in the US, between the US and Russia. Yeah. One of them, I talked about her, Marina Popovich, where it's like her UFO encounters are one of the big themes, but also just like UFOs in the Soviet Union in general. Yeah. And like, you know what I mean? These backdrops to have. One of them, my most recent one, was on Major Donald Kehoe, who was like the first big time ufologist in the US in like the 1950s. So like, that's kind of like another backdrop. It's like the 50s culture pertaining to UFOs. Yeah, for sure. And it makes it fun and kind of interesting.
Yeah, everyone check out his channel. And we're going to do more podcasts. Yeah. This one is kind of an introductory podcast.
My first time talking on camera about this. So having fun.
Yeah, for sure. One theory, like one question that I would have just to get your opinion on it is why wouldn't, let's just say UFOs are actually technology that our government, best case scenario, it's technology that we've somehow created, and who knows how. If maybe we found a crashed UFO, maybe Roswell was a UFO that we found, we studied it, we reverse engineered it and created technology ourselves. why would that not be released to the public? Why is it such a secretive?
So if that was
thing?
like if it was a human craft,
If
all
it
these
was a
things,
human craft
yeah.
and they're trying to keep it under wraps, why wouldn't we release it? I mean,
I
why
think
wouldn't
it's
we?
just like a rules of war thing. It's probably, if that was the case, it was probably because they don't want our adversaries to know like our full capabilities.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't
Yeah.
want to like put all your cards on the table.
Yeah.
Just in case something was to go down between us and like another world power. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We still want to have some sense of like edge. I guess,
and
you know what I mean?
why like, and it seems like what America would like what we've done in the past. It seems like we would put our cards on the table because we like to show how much more advanced and how much more powerful we are, right?
Yeah.
So that's even one of those questions.
A perfect example is like the Manhattan Project when they were developing the atomic bomb. You know, that was under like lock and key because you know, it was one of the best like kept secrets I think our government's ever done.
Yeah.
And if this UFO stuff is real, then it's like only second in.
That's what I was about to say. Like if this UFO stuff, I mean, it's a game changer for sure.
Yeah.
Especially if anti-gravity stuff, you start getting in there, like that's.
Yeah,
man.
exactly. It's going to change. Basically, any like we talked about those like 3 or 4 possibilities that this could be. Any one of those that you look at, this is like a pretty historic time.
Yeah.
Like even if it is just like our government has developed like some sort of anti-gravity craft and they're trying to like cover it up with UFOs, that's a big deal.
Yeah. While we're hitting on the like anti-gravity subject, the current technology with jets right now and stuff, is there any anti-gravity technology?
No.
Not like actually like manipulating gravity, but I can't remember who I've heard talking about that there is technology right now in some of our like crafts that is like maybe not anti-gravity. Do you know much about the technology?
No.
Yeah, I got to look into that. Very interesting.
Everything I've read and seen from like the witness testimonies and like the fighter pilots who've encountered them, they say this is like not even like next generation, but like next generation. With like new sciences have to be like created basically to help us understand what is going on.
Yeah.
It's not something that like, oh, in 20 years we could probably do that.
Yeah. And what about this? This is something too that really caught my interest when I was listening to Bob Lazar talk about this shit. The idea that Roswell was a UFO that crashed and we found it and we study it. We found crafts and we're studying it. And a lot of the sightings that were happening back at that time were us figuring out how to maneuver these UFOs. Like we found them and then we learned, okay, here's how you maneuver it. Now let's fly them and test them out and see how it goes. And we did that for a while and there was a lot of sightings at that time, right? And then the fuel, whatever it was that was powering these UFOs ran out. An element, something like that. There's some element.
Element 115, yeah.
Element 115. And that like we ran out of the fuel and no longer could pilot them. And then that's why there's this huge gap of no more UFO sightings. And then maybe now somehow we figured out how to refuel it. Just one of those theories. What are your thoughts on that theory?
That's an interesting theory for sure. But I think there's been like sightings basically like consistently more or less through like the 40s at least. From the 40s till today. But no, I'm not sure on any of this, but I've heard it said that like there's been crash stuff and like we retrieved technology from it, but that stuff is obviously super hard to
it's super conspiratorial. And it interested me because it makes sense. It would be like if we had a time machine and we had a motorcycle and we went back to like, you know, whatever, 1,000 years ago and we took this motorcycle and just dropped it down like ancient Egypt and they were like, what the fuck is this? This is crazy. And they played with it and eventually they probably would learn how to operate it.
Yeah.
But then the moment the gas ran out,
they're done. Yeah.
They're done.
No, totally interesting. Yeah. And I think that kind of goes into like another interesting point about this whole like quote unquote disclosure we're in.
Yeah.
Whatever the end outcome is. I think it's interesting to note that like when Tom went on the Joe Rogan show, he was kind of saying like not outlandish things, but more into what's behind them.
Yeah.
And right now, all of the people that are on mainstream media, Lou Elizondo, who we talked about, Chris Mellon, who we talked about, Steve Justice, the Lockheed Martin guy who we've talked about, they're all trying to steer clear of that. So I think that's kind of a indication of that they want this to be like a slow roll. So
wait,
like,
they're staying clear of
they're staying clear of like saying who or what is behind it. They're at the point now that it seems to me that they just want the general public to accept that these things are real
I see.
and establish that, and then move into like stage 2 where it's like, here's what these possibly could be.
I see.
Or maybe there have been crash craft. I think Elizondo actually recently, within like the past week or two, went on and did some interviews where he said there was crash materials that like the Department of Defense like houses.
I see.
So
would you say it's? I know you said you kind of have to wrap up at around 5, right?
yeah.
Okay, because it's like 4:50 now.
Okay, we're a little bit over, but
Yeah, we have a little time. I want to kind of say, I want to get the gist of, it sounds like what you're saying is that you're saying you don't know, right? You don't know what it is, but you do believe that it seems, or this is just me putting words in your mouth,
no,
but
to go for it.
Kind of seems like you're saying you don't know, but you believe that there is something going on with the government trying to roll out this information, that there actually is like an effort to do this, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's like the thing I would say I'm most confident on.
Okay.
And like when I step back from like the things I'm like confident on, I would say that there's probably like these things are probably otherworldly or interdimensional or something like that.
I see.
But the confidence, like this is actually happening. The main talking points that I like try and bring up when I bring this up with like other people who like.
Yeah, let me ask you that. Let's say me playing devil's advocate, I think it's all complete bullshit. What are like a few of the key, like real primary points you would say, well, wait a minute, here's some like real points.
Yeah.
Let me tell you this to convince me.
Kind of like maybe with what we were starting off with was just mainly the credentials.
The credentials of the people.
Well, typically what I'll do is I'll ask people like, have you looked into it? And that's been proven to be very like useful, I guess is the word. Because a lot of people have strong opinions on this and they've never looked into it.
Yeah.
There's so many people who we've just kind of been conditioned over the past 70 years to view this subject as like a fringe kook subject.
Yeah.
That
it's pretty like there's either this side or there's this side. The people that believe it or the people that think it's complete
like
bullshit.
The people like the popular culture perception of people who like are into this subject. It's like, oh, they're crazy, like da 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 da.
Yeah.
So I always ask people that, and that kind of humbles them because they realize their own like lack of knowledge and like their own opinions based on like no foundation, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's always like an important spot to start. And then after that, I usually will acknowledge that this is like an uncomfortable topic because I found that to be something when I try and talk about it with like my friends even.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People have strong opinions that are not really grounded on anything.
Yeah.
And then 2, this makes people uncomfortable because
there you go.
if it is real, if this is all real, you know what I mean, the implications are pretty big and could change a lot of things. So I kind of like to establish those things first. And then from there, I'll go into the credentials of people who have commented on this or who have, you know, had experiences like we were talking about earlier. We have astronauts and we have military fighter jet pilots. And we've talked about both of those positions require like extensive training, extensive education.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, isn't there just a lot of cases of pilots?
Yeah.
A lot,
airline
right?
pilots, regular airline pilots, like Marina Popovich. I'll talk about how it's like not just a US phenomena. And I think once people are initially humbled by the fact that they haven't researched it, and then I give the credentials of like some of the people who have talked about it, and it's like, I'm not saying this. It's like, I'm just reiterating what this person who has all this knowledge in airplanes and how they work and how they maneuver is saying. You know what I mean? And it forces them to be like, well, yeah, you know what? I'm not a pilot. I haven't flown.
Yeah.
How am I going to have no knowledge, done no research, have this opinion? And then how am I going to say that my opinion is better than this person who has all this knowledge and actually encountered one?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to start, to try to get people to at least open their mind a little bit to thinking about it in a different way. And also the fact that you're not saying this is aliens.
Yeah, no, yeah.
You know?
I'm kind of like trying to mimic what they're doing right now, where it's like some of my videos, I kind of do get into like the quote unquote like weirder, high strangeness aspects of it. But for now, just kind of like with my videos, just kind of prove that there is something there.
Yeah.
Who knows what it is? Because I still don't know what it is.
For sure.
I'm always bouncing around with what it is.
Yeah. What, like, just to get into the fun topic while we're getting toward the end, like, what eyewitness accounts or people have talked about it from that it is aliens perspective? Are there any that you've like seen that really interested you talking about it, like abductions or anything like that? The actual that it's actually some type of extraterrestrial or alien type thing.
So there's like the abduction phenomena, which has happened, and
What are your thoughts? Just sorry to go on the tangent, but what are your thoughts on the abduction phenomenon and how does that relate to the UFO thing right now?
So if I had to like really put my foot down on anything, I would say that I think this whole phenomena is a little stranger than just like UFOs, right? Like how we've kind of talked about, or like just like aliens from another planet.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a good chance that these things are some sort of intelligence that like we don't fully understand, and that they've probably like meddled in human affairs for a long time. And I think the abduction phenomena is probably part of that, because you see similar things related that like when you read about them from history that like, oh, that sounds like an abduction phenomena. Where, what's a good example? Like in Celtic culture, there's the tales of fairies that would like abduct people, and people would have missing time, and there would be these little entities that like would walk around them and stuff like that. And nothing even related at that time to a craft or like a metallic hard, like, you know what I mean? A lot of like religious like experiences and things you'll see. What's a classic one? The Lady of Fatima in Portugal in 1917, which is a big Catholic thing, you know, and I was raised Catholic, so I like knew about this growing up from that point of view. But it's like, you'll see that like the three kids that originally had that experience, the first thing that happened is they encountered a small little entity, which they thought was like an angel of love or something like that. Yeah. And after that had happened, they had missing time and they were dehydrated, which is another common thing that you see in alien abductions, UFO abductions.
Yeah, for sure.
So you have all these kinds of things that are happening before the term UFO existed, before our like flight capabilities were like realized. Yeah. So I do think there might be something to the UFO or the abduction phenomena. The thing that always like kind of grounds me in like not saying that something doesn't exist is that, like we've talked about earlier, like these things are clearly outperforming us and outmaneuvering us. So who's to say what they are not capable of? I'm not going to say because I can't conceptualize abductions happening that like they're for sure not that thing, because these things are already like outperforming us.
Yeah. Well, what about the theory that all of these alien abductions are actually just DMT trips?
Yeah, that's also, you know, sleep paralysis.
Yeah. I've had some pretty crazy like out of body experiences.
Oh, really?
Paralysis.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
I'll talk about it at some point. Like, nice. I want to get someone on. Just your typical like. I've experienced sleep paralysis quite a bit, like especially a few years ago. You know, have you ever had that experience? Yeah, just
thankfully, it sounds scary. It sounds horrible.
Yeah, it's weird. It's just where
don't people say they see little beings too? Did you have that?
Some people. No, I didn't see. It wasn't actually the sleep paralysis.
Charlemagne the God says that. You talk about it.
Who?
Charlemagne from the Breakfast Club.
No. Okay. Yeah, but everyone does talk about seeing beings, seeing little things. The old lady, whatever it is. My experience with sleep paralysis was just being completely paralyzed. My body, but I could, my eyes were open and I could see around me, I could hear, but I was completely frozen. I could not move. And it is freaky, especially then, because I didn't know, like I had no idea what was going on. Like I didn't know what sleep paralysis was. So it always freaked me out. Like it really felt like you're stuck in your body.
Totally,
you know what I mean?
How, like the knowledge of it and then having it happen would be scary, but then not even knowing that was a thing and then having that
really freaked me out. Now I like,
does it happen often?
Not now. Oh, okay. It's like as soon as I learned about astral projection, out of body experiences, fucking stopped happening. Yeah. It's every now and then, but it used to happen like at least 3 times a week, like a few years ago.
That sucks.
But we kind of hit on it for a second, and you were saying like, you wonder if there's some connection with psychedelics and UFO experiences.
Yeah, I do think about that too, because like, a lot of DMT trips sound similar to abduction
right?
tales. You have the little green entities, machine elves. I've never done DMT, but I've watched enough Joe Rogan. I'm sure you have too, to feel like you've done DMT.
I want to. God, I want to try it at some point.
So it's like, I'm sure there's something connected. Then you have these kind of entities appearing all across cultures, like the jinn in, I think, like pre-Islamic Arabia, which is where like genie comes from in Aladdin and like that kind of thing. No. They were tricksters, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, I don't know. I think this thing could be a lot weirder than just aliens from another planet.
I wonder, though, the whole psychedelic thing, that to me could very well explain people who have abduction experiences. I could see someone laying on their bed and having some type of psychedelic experience, either induced by taking something or even just induced by sleeping, whatever it is, like sleep paralysis, and whatever it is, dreaming, having that experience. But I don't see a tie with the UFO phenomenon, because that's like credentialed people talking about it at such a high level, you know?
Okay, here's a weird tidbit. One of the the To the Stars Academy people, right? So the person I'm about to talk about, let's just reiterate who they're alongside with in the same company saying that UFOs are real. So we had the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, Chris Mellon. We have the man who ran the Pentagon program, right? Luis Elizondo. We have Steve Justice, who ran Lockheed Martin's Special Division Skunk Works, right? So three pretty like hard on the books, credible people.
Yeah.
Another one of the top dogs, quote unquote, for that company is a man named Hal Poodle, who ran the CIA remote viewing program for
that's right. That's
for
right.
like 20
that's
years.
Such an interesting.
So that's like such an interesting. So one, to me, it's interesting that they're even talking about UFOs,
right.
But then also it's like the fact that they're on a panel with this guy. It's almost like they're saying what his research was legit, you know, and he stands by his research.
Yeah.
Our government funded it for 20 years. That to me is like, at the very least, interesting.
Yeah.
So why is this?
Do you mind just quickly explaining what remote viewing is for everyone that might not know?
So Project Stargate is what Hal Poodle ran. I want to say from the 70s to the 80s, somewhere around there. And so basically what they were doing is trying to, and this is super like, what's the word I'm thinking of, like contended or whatever. But they were trying to remote view, which is the idea of using like your mind to see objects like that you can't see with your eyes, basically.
Yeah.
Just like using psychic powers straight up to like they were trying to like get intelligence on the Russians during this time using this stuff. And another fun fact, I guess it's fun, right? Is that the Soviets had their own remote viewing program.
Yeah, it was
other
like
countries have done it. It was our government funded it for 20 years officially. And then so now you have this guy who ran that program, and he's an accomplished scientist. Like aside from that, like he has got a bunch of patents. He's got a bunch of inventions that he's done. He's done space propulsion. He's consulted by NASA. So it's not like he's just like the remote viewing guy.
Yeah,
he's a credentialed dude who did remote viewing at Stanford, by the way. This is where they did this for 20 years.
Like it was legit. It was studying the phenomenon, you know.
So,
and people have out of body experiences and like near death experiences.
Connections like that is where I kind of say like maybe the psychedelic thing is related.
Yeah.
To where it's like you have all these nuts and bolts people over here, but then you also have this guy who's like running literally remote viewing.
And what is he doing for the To the Stars Academy exactly? What's his title there?
I don't remember exactly his exact title, but he's just basically doing like the same thing as them, kind of going on mainstream media to talk about it.
Really?
Was he the one he's that in, like, was the science division, like trying to like recreate like technologies based on it.
Gotcha. Who was the guy that was I think in your video you were saying brain and consciousness consultant or something like that. Was that guy?
It might have been him. Yeah. I'd have to look back and see what all their like specific titles there is.
And that brings me up. That brings this up. The idea that it ties directly into that there are people that believe that these UFOs are navigated with your consciousness or whatever that is. That it isn't. It's all done with the mind somehow. What have you done the research into that yet?
Yeah,
what is that all about?
There's a lot of people who think that. Even Tom DeLonge says
that.
On
his
that's
interview.
What he was
saying.
His Joe Rogan interview, he said, which I mean to me makes sense, right? Like if something is that far advanced, you know what I mean? It might be hard for us to conceptualize, but like I'm sure that a craft capable of doing the things we've seen, where we talk about like high Earth orbit, atmosphere, underwater with like no resistance or anything.
I mean, time travel, do they?
So that's a theory that people say too. I don't really know if I just like subscribe to that one as much as some of the other ones.
Because if you can manipulate gravity, you manipulate time.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, that's the theory.
Yeah.
And if you can do all that shit, it makes sense that it would be somehow tapping into consciousness in a way.
So that's why I say I think this thing's a lot weirder. And I think they know that too. And I think that's why they're doing this like right now. I just want everyone to acknowledge that this is a real thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if you were to come out, because like we talked about, like most people think the subject is kooky. Or two, if they're kind of open to it, they're already like conditioned to think that these are aliens from another planet.
Yeah.
Most people don't even consider that this could be something a lot weirder, maybe related to consciousness.
Yeah.
Maybe related to like our whole reality. You know what I mean?
Sure.
What if these are simulation theory? You know what I mean? Like
you just said it. I gotta bring it up with you because you seem like you're the type of guy that is interested in it. Simulation theory.
Yeah.
Are you into that?
I definitely like listening to it, and I think it's important to be aware of. I don't know enough to say if it is or isn't a thing.
Who do you listen to that talks
about it? The math makes sense. Ooh, there was a good what's his name? Alex Asmanov or something like that, one of those famous Russian scientists. And they do this yearly discussion. And 2 or 3 years ago, it was like Neil deGrasse Tyson on a panel with like a bunch of other like super distinguished scientists, where they were talking about it. There was the guy who actually wrote that first book. I've seen a couple of videos by him and just some YouTube stuff. But yeah, I don't think it's totally without like outside the realm of possibility. And like related to the UFO phenomena, sometimes it's like these things are defying the laws of gravity and physics. Yeah. Maybe it is like from base reality. You know what I mean? And that's why they're not affected by things like
you know Tom Campbell. Have you heard of him?
No. Is he on Joe Rogan?
He hasn't been. But my God, he would be an interesting guest. Tom Campbell is a guy that dives the deepest that I've ever seen anyone dive into simulation theory. Yeah. He actually has 2 books that he wrote called, or 3 books maybe. The books are called My Big Toe, my Theory of Everything, and he just like considers himself a consciousness studier. Yeah. And he's a scientist, like a legit scientist.
Consciousness is one of the things like we understand the least.
We don't understand anything really about consciousness.
And I think that kind of ties into the whole thing too. It's like, I feel like over the past 60 years or so, humans have kind of like, well, one, we've always kind of been cocky, but now like with science and stuff too, I feel like we think that we know it all. And that's why some people dismiss UFOs so quickly. Yeah, but I think a lot of it is like being humble and like admitting like, you know what, we really don't know a lot.
Yeah, we don't. I'm with you there. I'm very, very, I try to be skeptical about everything. I'm definitely biased, like, but at least I'm very aware that I'm biased, you know, like I'm definitely biased. I would love for UFOs to exist. I would love that aliens have come down, abductions, but I'm very skeptical about it. Like I keep my mind as open as I can, but consciousness is one of those subjects we don't understand a lot about it. Yeah. And it's weird. It seems like the past like 10 years, it seems like there's a lot of stuff coming out that's somehow all threaded together, right?
Yeah,
like
that's how I feel. That's how I feel about all of this. When we were talking even earlier, you said you had like a Ancient Civilizations guest on.
Graham Hancock talked about him.
Graham Hancock guy, and I think it's all kind of related.
Yeah, for sure.
There's definitely common threads you see like when you research psychedelics, UFOs.
Well, what are your thoughts on the ancient alien theory?
I don't think it's necessarily outside the realm of possibility, or the fact that maybe some religions are like cargo cults. Have you heard of that term?
No, cargo cult?
Cargo cult is basically in World War II, like in the Pacific, there were these like Bronze Age tribes that were like on uncontacted islands in like New Guinea and stuff like that, and they would see planes flying over and like dropping off supplies and stuff to troops, and they took that as them being gods because they were displaying technology that like was totally outside their realm of possibility.
Damn.
And so they ended up like they would make like landing strips and stuff like that, not knowing what a landing strip is or whatever, but just to like get the gods to come. So
I have not heard of that. My God.
Oh no, yeah, you should look into that.
Interesting. I should look into that.
But so I think there's maybe a good chance that that's the case. Or you know what? I'm even open sometimes I read about this and I'm like, oh, maybe this religion actually is right, and this is what we're seeing. You know what I mean? So I think it's just at this stage, like acknowledging it, yes, but then looking forward to like step 2. It's just kind of like getting as much information as you can from like as many sources as you can, and trying to piece together some sort of narrative. Yeah. But yeah, I do think that maybe the ancient alien thing is real because, like I said earlier, like I don't think they just got here all of a sudden. Yeah. With the technology they have. It's not like they just developed the technology on their planet in 2001.
Yeah. You get into Graham Hancock, right? You like listen to a lot of stuff.
Not yet, but like listening to him, yeah. Eventually I want to make videos about like some of those ancient civilization stuff because it is fascinating. Like you see like clear digressions in building technology, and you see stones being moved, like giant stones being moved like hundreds of miles.
I think my theory or what I'm leaning toward with all of that stuff, the Graham Hancock stuff, the ancient civilization stuff, isn't like aliens. I kind of have I've stepped away from the ancient alien theory with it, but I have more and more been leaning toward that humans have been around a hell of a lot longer.
Yeah, I super agree with that, and that there's been cycles of it.
Yeah, there's been cycle. I mean, to me, it just makes sense. Like it just really makes sense that that's very possible that humans have been around for a lot longer, and we've advanced to points that we just would never even consider in mainstream history.
There's stuff that like science. We couldn't have built until like probably like the 50s.
Yeah.
with like our hydraulic power and stuff like
Yeah.
that we had seen and that had been like old.
Yeah. And did you watch the Magical Egypt documentary that Joe Rogan talks about all the time?
Oh no, is that Graham Hancock's like official documentary?
It's not Graham Hancock's, it's John Anthony West. Have you heard of John Anthony West?
Oh, that sounds familiar.
John Anthony West has been on Joe Rogan, and he is like,
Oh, is that his like kind of big friend?
he's no. He actually died not too long ago.
I'm thinking
pretty
Randall
recently.
Carlson.
Yeah, you're thinking of Randall Carlson. John Anthony West is the guy that like is the premier guy on ancient Egypt. Like the studies that he did, he went into super deep.
Yeah, there's
like,
some weird stuff
so
about
much
ancient
stuff.
Egypt. What is it? Those pillars in like the tomb thing?
Yeah,
that are,
there's all kinds of
lifted
crazy
super
shit.
high and they're like tons, like 30 tons.
Yeah, 30, like insane stuff. Just that in and of itself, the insane maneuvering skills. Like, how do you lift this stuff the way that they lifted it? How do you line it up so perfectly? But then even more interesting to me, you should watch this documentary. You would probably really love it, is the fact that the pyramids were built, not the pyramids, but some chamber. I can't remember the king's chamber. I don't remember if it was in a pyramid or a temple or something, but it was built almost as if they understood sound way better than we understand. Like they understood sound waves and the different frequencies of sound, because they built it with like no corners, that it was built with everything seamed together. Like you would think, well, why weren't the corners of these things just stacked up with bricks like normal? But they built it where it was all curved and interlocked like this. And like if you sing in it, even now, it's like, you know, super degraded and there isn't even a ceiling. But when you sing like certain notes, I think it echoes and resonates. And then John Anthony West was saying that like in the King's Chamber, the whole fucking thing vibrates. And then there's the whole theory that they move stuff with sound, right?
Yeah,
They
I've
use
heard that
sound
theory.
waves to move it all. It's like, to me, it's interesting stuff.
Dude, it
you know?
really is. And it's like another like thing I love to like fall back on in this whole ancient civilization thing is the whole like Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah, Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah, Göbekli Tepe. And it's like that wasn't discovered until I think the 90s.
Yeah, it was pretty recently discovered.
I think I might have been like alive before it was even discovered, which is crazy to think about. And it just kind of goes to show like how little we know.
Yeah.
Who's to say there's not another one that we're going to find in 5 years?
I think
that's
so.
Like older?
I mean, it's like what Graham Hancock says about the U.S. is like this unexplored. He thinks that it sounds like he thinks the U.S. is going to be, if archaeologists will just, you know, suck it up and really try to explore the U.S., that there could be a gold mine of ancient civilizations here. It's the perfect, you know, it has all the perfect. It's the perfect layout with the resources and the ocean surrounding it and all the stuff that you would need for something to thrive, you know. And that's the theory. It's unexplored, at least deeply, you know. So, yeah, all interesting stuff. Well, we're past 5 now, so probably a good time to wrap it up.
But a good starting point, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have to just have you come back on again.
Yeah.
Any updates? I'll be keeping track of your channel.
Yes.
Everyone go subscribe to his channel and watch.
Yes, Red Panda Koala, subscribe.
Any last thoughts? Any last thing you want to say?
I just think this is an exciting time to be alive. I often think about that. This could be like not. The UFOs could not necessarily be benevolent or anything, but just to live in this time period, I feel pretty fortunate compared to our other humans.
Yeah, same.
And just even technology and stuff. But yeah, this is a super interesting time to be alive. What the US government is saying about this and what formal officials are saying about this is like an unprecedented thing. So I think the wheels are already in motion, and we're all in for like pretty crazy ride, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
We'll keep track of it. Everyone keep an open mind to all this stuff. Check out his channel.
Cool.
And I'll see you on again. We'll do it
See
again
you
soon.
again soon. Cool.
Thank you, Josh.
All right.